I'm Gustavo Andrade, also known as Gus. I'm from Brazil, born and raised there. I moved to America, it's gonna be 5 years ago. And that's it.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah. What part of Brazil?
I'm from the state of São Paulo.
São Paulo, okay.
And the city is actually Santo André, is nearby São Paulo.
Gotcha. When did you come to the United States?
The end of 2018.
Okay, this is fairly recent. So you spent a lot of your lifetime in Brazil?
Most of my life, born and raised there.
Wow, okay. Were there a lot of music fans in your household when you were a kid? Mom and dad listened to much music?
They did. Like Brazilian music, they were not so into like rock music or something that actually got me into music, but I always had like my dad listened to like kind of like something equivalent to the country music here, like old school country music, but from Brazil, kind of like I'm just making an equivalent. It's not the same kind of music, but
sure,
it has like some roots on the countryside. Because my dad's from the countryside, so he brought that with him, like that that kind of like taste for the music, and everything that was around. I used to be like, I remember that I was always interested in music and like the records and and then after the CDs and everything that I could see. I have an older sister, so she was a teenager. I was still a child. I was like seeing some pop CDs like popping up at home.
Yeah,
and that was like the early like contact with music I had. I actually got into like wanting to be a musician and like love music when I was about 12. I remember I used to go to a school, and nearby to the school there was one guy on the street that he used to sell like pirate copies of CDs.
Okay, yeah.
So I was already interested in rock because of radio or something that was popping up, but I didn't know name of bands or anything. I just knew that the guitar and drum and bass were like a lot of noise, and I thought it was interesting. So I remember seeing the Nevermind by Nirvana album, like a pirate copy.
Yeah.
And then I like skipped lunch in school and saved the money and went there and bought a pirate copy.
With your lunch money?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I left school instead of walking home here that was close to my house. I just walked the other way because I remember there was that CD over there and that iconic like artwork just got my attention. The baby going after the dollar bill.
Yeah.
And when I got home and I played that for the first time, like Smells Like Teen Spirit, it was like a slap in my face.
Yeah.
That completely changed. I didn't speak English at all. I just had like a little contact because of like cartoons and American like movies and stuff, but and a little bit in school. But then after listening to that album, that day I say like I need a guitar and I need to learn English.
Really?
And that completely changed my life.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the turning point. That everything that happened after that was because of that day, pretty much.
You know what? I don't think it matters that you didn't speak much English at the time, because I feel like for a music fan, it doesn't matter if they're speaking his language or not.
Yeah.
Kind of like a tattoo. Like you don't need to know the meaning behind it or what exactly it is. It's a piece of art.
Yeah, it's art.
And you can appreciate it at many different levels. You know.
Yeah.
Were they getting airplay at that time in Brazil? Nirvana.
No, not all. Like I just had like the regular channels on Open TV. I didn't have like cable. Didn't have MTV yet.
What about the radio though? I mean.
I didn't have contact with that. I actually learned about the rock stations. That were not many, but I learned about them later because I was already listening to music. But as you say, sometimes you don't understand what the lyrics say, but that feeling is the same feeling that I have listening to the same songs nowadays, and now I understand the lyrics, and I say like the feeling behind those lyrics it's exactly this feeling I was having just by listening to the sound.
Yeah, that to me is sacred. Music's ability to convey a feeling doesn't. How would you say? The words are irrelevant. You don't have to speak language at all. It could be no vocals at all. It can convey a feeling. It's like magical. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What was, excuse me, what was the draw? Why was there such an attraction for you to that album? Had you heard anything about it before? Was anybody talking about it?
I think I heard the name before.
Yeah.
Like kids in schools talking about their older brothers, like in bands, and say like, and the name Nirvana, which I didn't know what it means either, but it's a simple name. It's easier for a non-English speaker than I don't know, for example, Megadeth or something that it would be hard for me to remember.
Yeah.
So I think that there was somewhere in my memory, and I saw that artwork. That was like a really bad copy. I still have that CD in Brazil. Years later, I have the original copy. You know?
Yeah.
And bought like all of the original CDs and start to like collect. But on the beginning, I know it's wrong, but I learned about music like buying pirate copies and downloading stuff.
Sure, by any means necessary. Yeah. That's funny. And because I was kind of wondering, because you said your dad, I'm going to imagine you said country or kind of like folk music. Was it that this was something unlike anything you had heard up until this point? Is that what sold you on it? Like once you listened to it, do you think it was the type of music that resonated with you because of the guitar and all that stuff? Or was it that this is totally different than anything I've ever heard, you know? Like what really sold you on it?
It was totally different. I had a few, I have contact with rock music before, like some CDs that my sister had at home.
Sure.
That were like Brazilian rock bands, but not as heavy as Nirvana. Mm-hmm. But I already like it. I already had interest, but nothing that completely made me like want to be a musician, want to do that. Was after that experience. I had contact with like Brazilian hip hop culture and rap before as well.
Yeah.
But that album made me like
just did it for you.
Yeah, did it for me. And then everything came after that, like Kiss, Iron Maiden, and like the things that were being released by that time, like early 2000s, like Linkin Park, like Limp Bizkit, and all the new metal scene, Papa Roach, and this kind of things. And then never stopped like learning and looking for more sounds.
So you get the album, you listen to it, and decide that that's what you want in your life. What's the next step? Do you somehow save some money and get a guitar? Like, what do you do about it?
So I was 12.
Okay.
I think I was 12, and so like I had no money to buy a guitar or anything, and so the next step was like begging my parents to give me a guitar.
Sure.
And I remember my dad saying like, that you're gonna just be making noise and something like that. But they noticed that I never stopped like insisting and listening to that music, like locked in my room, like every day after school, like, and listen to that and only paying attention to that. I stopped like playing soccer, which is a big thing. Kind of like I still like it, but I didn't have the same interest of the things that I had as a child. It was like a change, and I convinced them to give me an acoustic guitar first, that kind of thing. Like, okay, acoustic guitar first, that it's cheaper and like you don't need an amp. Or
I didn't negotiate.
I didn't know that I had an amp, that I needed an amp or cables or picks or pedals, anything. That was like like completely unknown to me. I just thought the guitar itself somehow made the sound. And then I started to take some lessons and like buy, back in those days, you know, internet was like a new thing. And especially over there, the access to internet wasn't so great. So we used to go to like newspaper booths on the street and buy some little magazines with chords and like the, you know, like the positions, the tabs.
Sure.
and that's how I started playing and having some lessons with like people that were like the next street to mine that's had a sign like I teach guitar.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And one after the other, I start to go to these people and try to like teach me something. And it's, whoever knew like a chord or something, I was always like looking at.
Did you have any input early on during that period that I guess would be indicative one way or the other of are you a natural? Because I mean, for instance, I work on boats. I'm a captain on a boats, and you first start out steered, and when you're studying this stuff, it's a journey that takes years to be able to assume the position of a captain. And I can remember one of the guys that was teaching me, I finally asked him, I was like, so what do you think? How am I doing so far? Because I couldn't tell, and he's like, well, and he paused for a while and he said, you're not a natural. You know what I mean? So I guess essentially what I'm asking of you is, through these instructors, were you able to kind of gauge where you were as a musician early on? Did you have anybody encouraging you or discouraging you?
I had like after my parents always encouraged me, like since they realized that I was like really into that really means something for me. It wasn't just something that I would give up after a few months. So they start to encourage me. And I remember I went to one of those teachers like that were teaching at their homes. This guy, he already passed away, but he was a blind old man, totally blind, and he was a great musician. And when I went there and I played a few of the things that I was working on, he wasn't so into like rock music, but he say like, I'm gonna be honest to you, I think what you're trying to do and what you're already playing, I'm not the right guy to you. I'm gonna send you to a guy that I know that is more specific into rock, and I see that you wanna play your leads and stuff. I think you're past the initial thing. I think on the beginning I caught up pretty fast, because I also spent like every minute after I got my first guitar I was like playing, so really early on I already had the calluses and
right.
So
I don't mean to interrupt. Can I kill that?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's no big deal. It's something that I'll always forget about. These mics are sensitive. Yeah, that's cool. Appreciate it. So I mean, that was a stroke of luck in itself to be sent to somebody else that was more specifically tailored to the genre of music that you were aiming for. And so you were able to take on lessons with that guy. And what about as far as a litmus or some kind of way to be able to tell how you were as a musician? Were you progressing, or did anybody tell you, Because I mean, I've interviewed people before where they said, my teacher told me straight up, you're never going to have a career in music, and they do now. So they can look back on that and laugh. But back then, I mean, especially when you're, like you said, you were 12, that's a tender age. And if you hear that from somebody that you consider an authority,
you crush your dreams.
Right, you can put it down forever based on their stupid opinion. You know what I mean?
No.
So I was just kind of curious if anybody, encouraged you, discouraged you, things of that nature.
No, I think mostly, as I remember, I think mostly people were like impressed or like in school. I remember when some other friends start playing, I was like catching up things faster, not because I think I was more talented or anything. I just think I was too obsessed.
Yeah, the work you put in.
Yeah, they were like playing video games and I was like not playing as much, or basically not playing anymore. Just like playing with my guitar and listen to the music. And I already trying to come up with like my own songs, and they were, terrible. But I thought I had something, so I kept like dreaming about learning and actually playing. I didn't think much about like a career or anything, because for me, I didn't have anybody who was like a professional musician around. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was like I have to do that. I was super young too, so I didn't care much about like thinking about actually having a career. So I think I was lucky. I think mostly of the people encouraged me, and some other teachers. And like years later, I went to a music school that I actually studied a little bit of like more like theory and for a short period of time. And I think I had like people that encouraged me more than disencouraged. I think the people that disencouraged was when I start playing, like I was super young when I played on a bar the first time. I was probably like 15, 16. I was like in a bar. I wasn't even supposed to be there at night, and I was opening for a band that the guy was teaching me guitar back in those days. He was my teacher. So, and then you start to face like criticism, you know, but I don't know, I never listened much to the probably I didn't even remember. So,
well, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
I was so focusing on keep playing and having fun with that and dreaming about it, like daydreaming about like playing bigger shows, and I still do.
Sure, yeah.
Never stop.
I don't think that ever dies. Let me ask though, so you're getting the tab books, you're learning theory, and you know, chord progression and all the things that come with that. Did it change the way that you heard music? Because, and I ask that because, you know, sometimes if somebody picks up the bass, they can listen to the song as a whole as a fan, but they can also go back and listen to it again and pick out the bass notes. They hear different things in there because they're viewing it through the lens of a bassist. Do you know what I mean? For you with guitar and these all these bands that you're getting the bootlegs or whatever for, was it kind of like a work tape, so to speak? Was it something that helped you in some form or fashion progress? Were you hearing the guitar notes?
Yeah, I think so. The more I was learning about it, the more I was understanding the sounds, because in the beginning I didn't know like what was a band, what that sounded that way. So I start to listen to the albums and say like, oh, and I think I know what he's doing here. So I start to listen more as a guitarist, and then years later, like later on in life, I start singing, and then it was like both. But I don't think it like I don't have like a vast knowledge about theory. Like I was always more like on the intuitive side. I don't think it actually changed the way I listen to. I think I started listening more as probably, you know, as a musician, but I think I never stopped listening as a fan. That's
sure.
Yeah. Like if something's playing on the radio, I don't care if it's like technical, if it's hard, if it's not. If it sounds good for me, that's what it is.
Have you been able to kind of pick up any tricks from musicians that you hear often?
You mean like from the?
I'm not sure. Maybe a group of chords that they played, or some kind of transition that they used, or you know, is there anything? I would imagine even when you first started as a child, you would try to emulate some of the guys.
Yes,
so you know, kind of picked up a few things there. You know.
Yes. I think. A lot of things I learned by listening as well. I think early on I tried to listen by ear, because I also didn't have many tabs for some of the songs that I like, or sometimes they were wrong, or they were in a different tuning, and I didn't even know you could change the tunings of your strings. Like for a long time I didn't know. So I just I think I learned by seeing other people, go and see other people playing as well, watching like borrowing like tapes, like videotapes from like friends that had like tapes from like a copy of like a Zakky Wylde guitar lesson that was probably the copy of the copy of the copy of the copy of
but
the
it was
video.
Instructional though.
But it was instructional, like some pentatonic stuff, and yeah, I think I started like catching a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Here and there.
It's funny to me that well, sometimes you'll have somebody picks up an instrument, and about the same age as you, let's say 12. And I think it's interesting because at 12, let's say 12 to 16, you're kind of forming your own self-identity. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to figure out who you are in this world and what part you play and things like that, who you're supposed to be. And then when some of them pick up an instrument, then it's another question that they're posed with is, what's my musical identity? How do I express myself musically? What do I like? What do I not like? What am I going to project as a musician? And it's like another void that they have to fill with answers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it sounds like none of that fazed you. Like you were just trying to do everything you could to stay married to the guitar. That did any of these things cross your mind, or was it not really
like trying to
relevant?
Develop my own identity?
Yeah.
I never wanted to copy anybody.
Yeah.
I think since the beginning I realized that I like different bands. Like I was into like new metal and Kiss and Iron Maiden, and so I was like all over the place. But on the beginning it was very like rock and metal. And when you're a teenager, you like all the songs that I liked before that, and the Brazilian popular music, I had to rediscover years after and say like, hey, this is actually really good, because when I was a teenager, like I just say like I only listen to rock and metal and I hate everything else.
Sure, yeah.
For a few years that was it. And I think the musical identity wasn't such a like a concern in the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think is a process. I think I'm still like looking for like a new sounds and everything. I never settled.
Yeah.
I don't think I settled. Yeah. And then later on I start to incorporate different kinds of music. I start to listen to a lot of things outside the rock and metal and universe. And I think everything is valid and everything.
Sure.
If you go for it, there's like a huge culture behind that.
Yeah.
That you can learn so much from that. Or even learn like what you can say like, I understand that, but I do not want to sound that way.
Yeah.
So, I think even the music you don't like is important and is valid, as a reference.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of musicians that their chosen music to listen to as a fan is not the same genre as their chosen music to play. I mean, what comes out of us is not always as choreographed. We can't decide.
Yeah.
It just comes out of you.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think it's important, like you're saying, because it gives us all a variety of influence. And I feel like if you want to be a musician that's multifaceted, then you'd better have some influences from different areas of the world, much less of the genres, It's interesting to me, too, also, that you grew up in Sao Paulo and came here only recently. And I have to ask, do you feel as though some of the culture that you grew up around and some of the sounds, traditional sounds and culture that you grew up around has found its way into your music now? Do you feel like it's had an influence? Because I mean, a lot of what you were listening to was from here, so it may not have. I'm not,
No, it did. Like, especially like in Silverdose now, I think I have, my mind is more open to incorporate things that are like Brazilian rhythms and stuff, experiment with some different ideas than I had before. I think it was some kind of like something that I started to realize that how rich that culture was, that when I was a teenager, I renegade. I think it's normal, and after you move to a different country, sometimes listening to the music, the not just like the Brazilian rock, but the Brazilian rhythms and everything. It's like you kind of like build like even more like a stronger connection. At least for me, that's how it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think all these things like are influences to me.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of my influences are American rock, British rock, like bands from Germany and
Yeah.
And
you
I
had
love 'em.
mentioned, I was curious, you were finding your own instructors at the time. Were there any music programs in school?
I think for like 1 year or two in school, I had some music lessons,
Yeah.
but it wasn't kind of like you're actually gonna learn an instrument. It was kind of, I remember like what I most remember about that one day we had to like use like some cans and build our own percussion instruments, and we performed like a bunch of kids like beating up like cans. And it was amazing for me. Like I spray painted the thing and decorated, put stickers, and I was playing. For me, it was already like performing music.
Sure.
All the noise, it probably sound horrible.
Yeah.
A bunch of kids
Yeah.
beating up on cans, but for me, I could feel that the thing. Like
That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah. And there was another thing that you had mentioned. I'm drawing a blank though. I did want to ask, following, let's just say your introduction to music, which occurred over the course of a few years from the time you were 12, what was your first, I guess, formal project? What was your first band?
So early on, I already went in a band like right after I had my guitar. So I started playing with some kids from school. I have a cousin there in Brazil who's a drummer, but he started like a little bit after me in the music. But we started listening to music together.
Yeah.
And making our own cassettes and like sharing music like that. So with him and some other kids from school, we were on the same school back then. We performed a live, and then there was a band because we had like a project that we somehow forced a way to say like, okay, so we're gonna write a song about this subject and we're gonna perform.
Wow,
kind of
okay.
because we wanted to.
Yeah.
And we convinced people to let us do that, and somehow they let us play a song for the school. And we did. So that was like pretty much the first band that didn't last much longer than that.
That was high school or middle school?
It
Or
was
before high school?
It was before high school, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was before high school. And then during high school, I was already playing with like one band here, one band there, trying to, most of the bands didn't last much longer. Because, most of the other kids, they had other interests as well. And I was too obsessed with the music.
Dedicated,
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it was always like a serious business,
Sure.
So I was super young, I always took it super serious. So when it comes to dedication and time and rehearsing, I'm still obsessed with that. And then I remember at some point I formed that band that also had my cousin playing the drums, that we performed the first time in a bar when I was already like 16.
Okay.
He was 16 too, I think.
Yeah.
And
What were y'all calling yourselves?
that was called Psycho Love.
Psycho Love?
Yeah. And I just played guitar on that band. We were like a four-piece, and we had like a singer. And there was a different projects as well that never got to perform live or anything. But with this band, we start playing in bars and going places, like not like big places, but just going around, trying to get any opportunity we could to perform. But that band didn't work out after like probably worked for like 2 years, something like that.
Was your age a hurdle? Because, y'all were pretty young to be playing in bars, right?
Yes. It was a problem because like in Brazil, you can only drive when you're 18.
Uh-huh.
So, like, if we had to go to a place that we couldn't take a bus or a train,
wow. Yeah,
because we used to do that all the time. Get on the train, get on the bus with the guitar on the back and little amps and
yeah.
But I had to like tell my dad like, oh please, can you take me there? I gotta, I agree on playing that show.
Yeah.
But they were always supportive, and sometimes they took us to places that they probably regret going. But it was we started to play around until my next band. That was actually the most like serious project that I had before moving.
Mm-hmm.
That was called Vulgar Type. That I already had these friends that already played in different bands, and so they already had like some level of experience, even though the band was like fresh. But we didn't have a singer, and I was like, okay, every singer that we tried, like he like he's arrogant and he doesn't even sing that good. And I say like, okay, so I can do that. So I start singing and say like, okay.
Out of necessity,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And I start singing and the guy say like, go ahead. I don't think it sounds that bad. And then I went to take vocal lessons. And then I was already like later on life and working and being through college before. And so I could like take like good vocal lessons with a professional singer. That was his name is Nando Fernandes. He's like a great singer. He recorded with like several bands from like even like international bands.
Yeah.
And performed.
Nando Fernandes.
Nando Fernandes.
Fernandes, gotcha.
Yeah. And I just saw he's singing with Lynyrd Skynyrd there in Brazil. He's great.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he produced our first EP as well. We released this EP with Vulgar Type. That has 3 songs. Everything is on Spotify, on Apple Music, everywhere. We had some music videos. Then my cousin that was the drummer before, he became a videographer.
Yeah.
And then he was shooting the music videos. And then we had a few other singles released with this band, Vulgar Type, a few other music videos. And then I was already, for like a random thing that happened in my life, I was already talking to this girl from Louisiana over the internet.
Yeah.
And I came here and went back there, came here, went back there, she went there, and that's how I ended up here.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Not an uncommon story, believe me.
Yeah, yeah. After it happened to me, I got to meet so many people with like crazy stories like that.
Yeah. Would you say that Vulgar Type, is that kind of on hiatus, or is that long since broken up, or is it something you revisit occasionally?
I just went there to visit my parents and my friends a couple months ago, and got to meet the guys. But they are not. Since I moved, the band never played anymore. But I listened every once in a while. When I went there and met them, like the other friends put on the songs to play like on repeat, because we play many shows there. So a lot of the stories and funny things that happened with our group of friends were related to Vulgar Type.
Yeah.
Somehow. So it was a very important time in my life. And I think it was where I got to actually like record professionally and work with like in studios and other musicians and get to play festivals and see some bigger bands playing and say like, oh shit, like these guys are really good.
Yeah.
We have to like level up, And I think it was it was like the best school I could have for what I do nowadays over here. I think.
Was it school or just motivation? Like were you getting something out of it other than
no,
the fire under your ass to do better? You know?
No, for me, it was like it was the project of my life back then. It was like the most important thing, just like Overdoses nowadays.
Yeah.
And so was the other bands. I just didn't have like I was still learning, but for me, since my first band, that was like, that's it. I found the guys and we are going far, Yeah. It was always like that. But I was getting a lot of it, with Vulgar Type. I was seeing like progress and more people, because of like talking to people from other countries. Because of that band, that's how somehow I started talking to my wife.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because I was already in touch with a lot of people from America. We actually had like CDs, some of our EPs like being sold in Japan, so then mailing stuff. That was I was learning how to do the stuff that I do, and I'm still learning how to do the stuff that I do nowadays.
Yeah. I think with the technology progressing at the rate that it does, everybody's gonna continue to learn into infinity, perpetuity, I should say, because it's never going to stop evolving. It's a breakneck speed.
Yeah, just so in this time frame, since I started listening to Nirvana in the pirate copy of a CD, to nowadays that you can pick up your phone and you go on your streaming service and you have like access to like pretty much anything.
Yeah,
that was when I was a teenager. That was like science fiction. If you tell me like you're gonna have this phone in your pocket.
Yeah,
I didn't have a cell phone until I was like working to buy my own.
Sure. Yeah, when you're a kid, it's not instantly available. Nothing was instantly available to me as a child. You could find out that something came out and then hope one day you come across it that maybe you can buy it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And now it's insane. It's opened a lot of doors in that things are coming out that maybe wouldn't have been accessible to everyone. You're talking about Nirvana. They recently released like 53 track, I don't know what they're calling it, if it's one album or a series, but it's like 53 songs. Some of them never heard before.
It's because of the anniversary of In Utero album. Yeah, right. I was listening to that on Spotify a couple of days ago.
And I mean, that's a perfect example. That's if they were only confined to physical copies of that, then they would have only produced so many. They would only have so many in each state and so many stores. And if you were lucky enough to come across it, maybe you'd be able to listen to it. But now, like you're pointing out, on the phone right now,
And this is like that makes the knowledge in the culture more accessible. Yeah. Like the same thing as I was talking about, like learning from tabs and little like magazines and stuff. Nowadays you go on YouTube and you have like the guy from the band like doing a guitar playthrough, and you say like, I can see like his fingers doing that. Yeah. And I can get the tabs, or you have like unlimited access to like so much knowledge. It becomes a distraction as well a lot of times from listening to music and I think experiencing both ways. It helps. We got to experience that, like the old school way to learn things I remember. I don't know if it works here because I don't even have like a house phone here. I only have a cell phone. Sure. But back then, I remember now we used to get the house phone, and the house phone was like a Note A. And that I used to tune the guitar with the house phone.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's my first time.
I don't even know if I just came to my mind. I don't even know if in America was the same sound as in Brazil. But I remember somebody told me that, and I was like, okay. So I was like,
That's hilarious. Yeah. That's so funny. It's a double-edged sword though with all the technology though, because you're now tasked as a band with, like you're saying, wearing these different hats. It's not just a musician anymore. You have to just to be on par with the rest of the music world, you're expected to do a lot. You're expected to be on all the platforms. You're expected to do all your own advertising,
all social
and
media,
promotion, and social engagements, and it's a lot, man. For the time that you have spent in the United States, what has, I guess, what's changed for you? What did it kind of open any doors, or was it more of the same? Were there new opportunities because you came here, or was it about the same as Brazil?
It's different. It's different. A lot of things. A lot of friends, especially friends from there, they ask me about from Brazil. They ask me about the experiences, because the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence as well. So a lot of people say like, now you're in America. Now you're, you have all the opportunities on the world for you, And you tell the musicians here, they say like, dude, what they're thinking. But I do have a lot of opportunity here. I think I don't mean to say like that. We always have reasons to complain about stuff.
Yeah.
But in Brazil, it was harder. A few things was harder, like the instruments, the equipment, and everything was more expensive. More like hard to have access to, like even like recordings, computers, and whatever, anything you can imagine. And so I know that musicians is struggle like everywhere, as we still do here, but I think I have a lot of opportunity here. I'm lucky to have in this short period of time that I'm doing music here in America, I got to meet so many people. So many people were open to listen to my music and like that embraced what I was doing and contributed somehow. Mm-hmm. Like friends from other bands, like all the bands around here, like so many people helped me out.
Yeah. Now, is that, I guess to clarify or make more specific, is that as a result of being in the United States, or is it as a result of the project that you're doing right now, maybe the level of musicianship that you have achieved? So, because it seems like more doors, not to sound religious, but they say God helps those who help themselves. I believe that the world does. And if you look like somebody that's trying and doing and doing some things for yourself, then somebody's more apt to lend you a hand here and there, or more open to letting you in or listening to what you have because you earned it. You know what I'm saying? In Brazil, you said that the cost to be a musician was greater. The instruments were more expensive, the electronics, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I get that part, but can you honestly say that America has been more embracing of you because it's America, or is it because of who you have become since?
Probably who I have become as well. That's sometimes when the guys from Vocalist there in Brazil, they ask me like about the opportunities and stuff. It's kind of tricky because I don't want to say like that my band it's better or worse, but I think I'm better now. Like I know how to do things in a different way, and I think it's part of what I became as a musician.
You never stopped though, right? And how long of a span of time are we talking between Vulgar Type and Silverdose?
So we played our last show with Vulgar Type in 2017 and 2018. I moved here. Okay. I was already in the process, but I was kind of like flying here to meet with my girlfriend from here, and I was still releasing new music there. So
gotcha.
But at some point, life just brought me here, and I life changed things for the other members as well over there. So they also went to work with different things and had different interests throughout the year. But when they asked me, like, these kind of things about the experiences is always like. I think I always get to the point that I am a different person. I think it's related to the thing that you asked me about my influences and the things that I let come through. Because Vulgar Type was more like we started very influenced by 80s hair metal and like Motley Crue, like all these kind of things, which I still love it. But nowadays I'm mixing way more stuff. Silver Dose is a band that started with no like it has to be this way.
Okay.
So when I moved here, I really didn't know a lot of people around here. So I remember there was here in Garyville, there was a festival called Sings and Strings. There's more like a jam festival. The musicians get together, and my wife told me I had just married her and moved here. So she had like a guitar, like an acoustic guitar, like kind of very like beginner acoustic guitar, and she said like, oh, you should take my guitar and go play something. And I went there and I started playing a few songs that I wrote that I was already working on, because I was moving here with the intention like I need to do music in America. I don't know if I'm gonna play guitar and sing or if I'm gonna start a new band, but I'm gonna do music. Yeah. I'm gonna make music. So I performed a few songs and got to interact with a few musicians from here, and then I got an opportunity for like an open mic night in a bar here in Garyville at Fetty's, and I played like a couple of times there, and that's how I met people that, you know, we got to start a band that after became Silver Dose. But I never stopped. So I think even though I had like this gap in between, of a few time in between the Vulgar Type and Silver Dose, I was always like writing songs and like waiting for what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your tone or your the type of music that you were writing, did it change from one era to the next? Did it change from?
I think it changed.
Yeah.
I think it changed. I remember when I start performing a few songs, a few people from here that got to listen to the material that Vulgar Type had released.
Yeah.
I heard that from this question from more than one person saying like, are you trying to sound different than your previous band on purpose, or you're just doing that because? And I was kind of like, I think both, kind of like I am trying to, but I think it's also natural.
Yeah.
That it was just for me. It was a huge change in my life as well. Yeah. Like changing to a different country, get exposed to different stuff. I think it just.
Not only that,
I couldn't do the same thing. Like I'm not even able to do the same thing, to write the same things again.
Yeah. But not only that, though, you said, I mean, y'all had specific intentions with the first band.
Yeah.
And your influences, and you wanted to kind of go down that road, kind of play in that vein. Yeah. Whereas with Silver Dose, your specific intention was no intentions. Yeah. At all.
Yeah, and the towards the end of Vulgar Type, we were, as a group, we were like trying to come up with something more modern, like even like the down tuning and playing a little different than the 80s metal that we all grew up like very influenced on.
Yeah.
So we were already experimenting. And I think that period in between, that's kind of like that second era of Vulgar Type, was already kind of like the like, how can I say, like what came before, like actually you can see some continuation of what I was doing.
Yeah, it's an evolution of sorts.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. Some people like the older stuff better. Some people like the new stuff better. It's a matter of taste. But for me, it's an evolution of of everything, you know.
Yeah.
I like to think that my lyrics are better now that I speak better in English
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't. I listened to a few of your tracks, and I didn't pick up on the accent. I really didn't.
that's interesting.
And but I don't think that's all too uncommon. And I don't know what it is to have an accent or to sing, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. But I think sometimes when you're spitting out vocals, it's a lot different than articulating a spoken word.
Yes,
You know, because
yes.
you're changing the language on the
Yes.
mic. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So yeah, that's pretty cool.
I remember the first shows with Silverdose already here. When I was singing, performing the songs, and in between songs when I had to talk to people, it was like, well, that was the big challenge, not to sing the song. That was like, now I have to interact on the microphone on my second language, and you know, it's becoming more natural.
Yeah.
But it still happens that I'm playing, like, we play a lot of songs one after the other, and I interact a little bit, but when we stop and I get to send like a message talking about like our next show or like interact with people, you see some faces like, oh, he has an accent, like in
You
the
see
beat
what
of
I'm
the set.
saying?
Yeah.
It
Sometimes
didn't
people
jump out
say,
at- yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you already have some people like drinking. They say like, hey, where are you from?
Yeah.
Like yelling from the crowd, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. When you're writing lyrics for your songs, do you ever catch yourself where something's lost in translation? For instance, like since English is your second language, I mean, do you think of these things? And what's brand in Brazil they speak Portuguese, correct?
Portuguese.
So, I mean, do you think, I don't know how to really pose the question, but I mean, like, do you think
If I think in Portuguese, no,
you know,
no,
or
I think-
when you want to express an idea, some things don't translate easily
Don't
from one
translate,
language
yeah.
to the other. So
It really
does it, are there times where you've taken pause because you have to get this idea out, but you've got to do it in such a manner that is received in English by English-speaking people?
Yes. I write my lyrics in English. You know, when I was younger, trying to write stuff in English, I used to translate, and so sometimes, if you go back, some things will say like, yeah, that's like a very weird way to make a sentence because it was translated. But nowadays, I only think in English, and I express myself in English. And if I need to like research, search for like synonyms or
Yeah.
like rhymes and stuff.
Yeah.
I look, but I always try to express myself in English
Yeah.
because I think I spend like pretty much all my time talking in English, so I think in English most of the time.
Gotcha. What's interesting too, colloquialisms, depending on where you go, they could have certain manners of speaking, or they could have certain ideas that are specific to that region, which is, you're not covering a big span of the earth. You know, it's a small area, and I mean that's super common in Louisiana.
Yeah.
You've got cultures upon culture stacked on each other, and they have deep-rooted histories: French, Spanish, Creole, Cajun. You know, are there manners of speaking similar to that where you were from? Are there
You mean-
expressions that wouldn't?
Oh yeah. Like region, according to the region.
Yeah.
I always joke that the English schools and all the English knowledge I had in Brazil did not prepare me for Louisiana because I got here, especially talking to older people that have more like speak sometimes more like Cajun.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what it is. Is it English? Is it what you say, like Cajun French or something? No, this is English. Oh, I couldn't catch a word.
Yeah.
But in Brazil it's the same way. Brazil is a huge country, so like if I meet a Brazilian person like in New Orleans that sometimes you hear people from everywhere. If I hear an accent, I hear Portuguese, I pretty much know which area of the country.
That's funny. You still
from.
Very specific knowledge.
Yeah, even like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, they're not even that apart, but it's a completely different accent and different slangs, and it's kind of similar when it comes to that. I don't know if I can catch all the American accents, but I don't know. Like if somebody from like Kansas or I don't know another state up to the north, if they speak so much different from each other, I think I don't catch that difference that obvious. Or in Brazil, there's even more difference of accents. I have a feeling that it's even more intense.
Yeah,
the difference. But as I'm saying,
sure.
Sometimes it's something I'm not gonna listen. I'm not gonna catch that.
I looked down the map years ago because I was seriously plotting. I wanted to go to Copacabana Beach and
you went there?
Ipanema. No, I wanted to go to these places.
It's gorgeous.
I had worked offshore for years, and we went to Trinidad and Tobago, and I was like, that was my first time out of the country. And actually, I take that back. I went to Colombia, but we couldn't get off the boat. We were sitting in port looking at everybody partying, but we couldn't get off the boat. So I go to Trinidad and Tobago, and I get off the boat, and I'm walking around for the first time in a different country, and I'm like, just entranced by all of this. And I was looking at Brazil. I don't know how that came about in my mind. You know that song, The Girl from Ipanema?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's what started me looking for Ipanema. I'm like, what is that? Where is that? And then saw Brazil, and then saw Copacabana Beach, and the terrain down there that within a short drive, you're on white sandy beaches or you're up in the mountains. And that fascinates me too. We don't have a lot of terrestrial features down here in Louisiana. Now you can drive an hour or two in each direction, and you can go from swamps to forest and things of that nature, but you're not going to see mountainous regions or things like this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, for me that was the first thing I noticed when I came here. I said like everything is flat.
Yeah,
because I grew up in a street that we used to play soccer on the street when I was young, and the ball would like go down the street because it's like this.
Yeah,
the houses are built like side by side like this.
Yeah.
And everything's a mountain.
Yeah.
When my wife goes there with me and we drive around, she say like it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Because you drive like this.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. It's funny.
How did y'all decide on here as opposed to her moving there?
She was about to graduate as a nurse. And so for her it would be better for a career. She went to a good college and had this opportunity here.
Yeah.
And of course I had like everything going on over there, like a band and like thousands of friends and a huge family. But I don't know, it seems to make more sense. I think it would be better for both. And I wasn't afraid to start again. Like I was excited.
Not, I was about to mention how your love for American metal throughout the years growing up. I mean, a small part of you must have been excited.
No, definitely.
Didn't mind so much coming.
I remember when I was working in São Paulo for years. I was working like really like in one of the most crowded spots in São Paulo.
Yeah.
And there was like all kind of cultures going around. There was a jazz band that used to play on a bookstore in the same building that I worked on.
Oh, okay.
And this jazz band, they used to play a lot of songs, and in between songs they used to talk a little bit about the history of the jazz, and then they used to say like, oh, New Orleans this, New Orleans that. And somehow I just say like, one day I'm gonna go to New Orleans. Like, and my coworker was like, oh, shut up,
Yeah.
And somehow life brought me here. I think like the two places I wanted to go was obviously like California because of, you walk in California, you see the music videos you grew up listening to.
Yeah.
In the movies, of course, but like New Orleans as well. Yeah, I was very interested in the culture.
Yeah.
In all the melting pot of cultures that it is. Because I think the area in Brazil where I'm from, it's the same thing. Kind of, there's like everything mixed together. Yeah. Yeah, you go to São Paulo, you go you get to the subway or a train, and on the same wagon, you're gonna see like all kind of demographics together, like people from all kind of cultures and different accents and everything.
Yeah.
So I was really excited. I think sometimes a lot of people have like a huge like illusion about like, oh, you're gonna move to America, so now everything's gonna be easy, you're gonna be rich, and this kind of things. I never had this like illusion, but I remember that when I passed through the immigration, actually was in Miami when I moved here. I remember the after like thousands of questions and papers and everything that I was through a process for like over a year, like to move here, doing everything. I almost missed my wedding because of the delay on the process. So I arrived the night before.
Oh wow!
I almost missed it. Yeah. But when I passed through the security and the guy say like, the security guy, I remember he looked like super serious my paper and look at me and say like, welcome to the United States of America. Or like a really big guy say like, he was super intimidated. He kind of say that and smile. And I was like, there's something click on my mind. I was like, wow, I'm gonna like now live where the movies are from.
Right. Yeah.
Like my inner child kind of say like, wow, I'm actually doing it.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I was excited. I'm still excited. Sometimes I go around in New Orleans and I still feel like a tourist still, like looking at, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot to ingest. That's interesting to me though that you mentioned that there are many different cultures where you were from, because that's definitely the case here, which you have noticed. What about market saturation? Were there a lot of musicians in the region where you were from? Was music prevalent, or was there a lot of live music, a lot of performing musicians?
So there was a lot of places closed down throughout the years when I was in Vocal Type. A lot of rock bars were closing. Like it happens here as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like places to play live music here in New Orleans, you have more places than I would say. It's like the thing is, São Paulo is such like is one of the largest cities on the planet. So you're gonna find a lot of everything and a lot of live music, of course. But I mean, like as an original rock band, I think there's more places in the area here. There I would have to go a little bit further. Of course, here we are going further. We are going to Texas. We are going to Mississippi, Alabama, and trying to expand the more we can.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot going on here. I can tell.
There really is, and sometimes it's discouraging. Sometimes it can be encouraging in that you're increasing your network.
There's a lot of bands,
but you have
a
lot. You have a lot to contend with. You got a lot to. You need to shine a lot brighter in a field full of lights.
This is not a complaint at all, but because I think it has a good outcome out of that. But the amount of bands who I became friends with that we get to share the stage. And they're like, I go to see them play, or sometimes we share the stage and they play before or after. I'm like so impressed. I say like, wow, this is like the level is super high. So it's kind of like, okay, I need to shine. I need to improve my stuff. But I think it's natural. I think it pushes. I think part of the opportunities of like growing here, like artistically, is because you have to.
Sure.
You know, like there's so many great musicians here in the area that it pushes you to like, you know, one way or another, you need to get your stuff together and keep like improving.
Yeah.
And I think this is good. Of course, there's always like this thing, like we talk among the bands around here about like saturation of the market as well. Because sometimes like there's a lot of, we play in a venue, so like yeah, there's not many people here, but on the other street there's like another band playing, and there are other band playing here all at the same day, at the same night, same time.
What can you say, I guess, about your strategy, taking that into consideration? Do you try not to play the same place too often, or do you know? What has it caused you to do?
We've been trying to expand more to other states, not stay just like locally.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, like a few time ago, we were playing like on the same like venues kind of often. So
yeah,
you know, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help the other bands.
Sure.
So sometimes like spreading apart, it can be beneficial. That's what we've been trying to do.
Yeah.
And we are about to release our first music video.
Okay.
So we are gonna working on like on the strategy of like, you know, like promoting our music to more people through like all social media and everything we were talking about. Somehow I still feel like even though we have like a following here in the area and a lot of people that know us, like I'm so glad for that, but there's still so many people in New Orleans that never heard of us. Sometimes we get to play, they say like, yeah, I've never heard of you guys.
There's an endless supply of potential fans, you know.
So like every day I always think about the same thing, like how do I get to these people, you know? How do we get to these people?
Yeah.
Because you know, a lot of people follow us on Facebook. A lot of people are not on Facebook. A lot of people are only on TikTok, for example, or like only on Instagram. So
yeah, it's true. There are many little pools of I guess potential fans, like we're talking about, but there are many different pools of people, and sometimes they never find themselves over here at this platform, but they're over here at that platform. So you got your work cut out for you, that's for sure. You know, I saw that y'all had released a string of singles and then came out with the album. I didn't double check though. The singles, those were completely different material from what was on that album?
Yes.
Tell them about the album, the name, and where they can find it and stuff.
The album is called Slender.
Yeah.
It was released over a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. It's on every streaming platform you have access to. We also have the CDs. We sell the CDs on our every show. We sell them online through Bandcamp. Mm-hmm. We also try to, you know, like we have like a pretty good like merch line of like hoodies, t-shirts, and you know, so many things. We even have a hot sauce now.
I did see that. That's funny.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've been like.
How did that happen?
So our bass player Jordan Tone playing, somebody from his work has, I think is his boss actually. He makes hot sauce, and he say like, I'm gonna make a hot sauce for your band, like just like for fun. And I said, and then the idea became something like, okay, if you wanna do it, so let's do it.
Yeah.
So I'm a graphic designer as well. I work as a graphic designer, so I design like the labels and the pretty much like most of the merch. And then the ideas, we have ideas we keep, you know, working
That's
on new.
funny though. You got you got a big chicken on the front of that album, and now you got some hot sauce to go with it. That's perfect. I was asking for another reason too, because we were talking about strategy, and I was wondering if the string of singles, because a lot of people are faced with kind of contending on streaming platforms, and you know, regardless of who you are, you're up against some algorithm on some platform, and you're trying to get it to work in your favor. A lot of times you'll see bands releasing nothing but singles because it doesn't make sense
to drop a whole album.
Right, yeah. But that was the string of singles with that. They were just they weren't like a cohesive body of work. They were just things y'all were releasing as they came out.
We were like recording and releasing.
Yeah.
And then the band, we played our first show, and then the pandemic started, the quarantine started.
Yeah.
So we spent like a lot of time not being able to play. So it was like writing songs and producing stuff. So that's how the singles start to be a thing. Like we were not like getting on a studio to do like an album.
Yeah.
And I think like we didn't have the material so ready for an album yet. It was experiments and some stuff. And then we had an EP.
Mm-hmm.
The EP has 3 songs that are on the album.
Gotcha.
So because the idea was to make an EP, but it developed into an album. So we kept recording and working on it. When it comes to the strategy of releasing, we are actually like working hard, like writing new songs. We have a couple of new songs and like a lot of like musical ideas that we are gonna be hopefully as soon as possible dropping more singles before having. I see that nowadays a lot of bands, even like bigger bands, unless you're like super huge, so you can drop an album and people are gonna be waiting to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of bands, they're like dropping singles. And then after a certain number of singles, then they have like, so this is part of this EP, or this is part of this whole album.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like the single became a format again, you know, like.
Yeah, but you know, I would say pre-streaming platform and all of that stuff, it wasn't all too uncommon to see a band release an EP and then later on release an album that contained work from the EP and kind of built off of it to do a whole album. Yeah. The thing that is disappointing is that albums used to be kind of like a journey or a story in and of itself, you know. Maybe it told a story, or maybe it started off with a certain mood and it kind of brought you up here, and then you know what I'm saying, there was some kind of continuity to it. You don't see that so much anymore because of this single driven strategy, you know.
I know what I feel that too, because I don't, even though I listen to albums, vinyl CDs and everything. But even when it's on streaming, I don't listen to a playlist. I go to a certain album and I listen to the whole thing. I still have that same like habit of like putting the CD on or a vinyl and listen to the whole thing, and then like, you know, going back and forth, but being on that universe of the album.
Yeah.
And I understand nowadays a lot of that was missed.
Yeah.
You know.
Let me ask you this, because I do this. I do what you're talking about, but I also do this. If it's my first time hearing about a band, or I want to find out about a band whose name I've heard, I'll go find them on streaming, but I go to the first album they put out. Like, I want to hear what they...
A lot of times I go to the first.
Yeah. Especially the older the band, because I can go back to 1968 if I want, you know what I'm saying? And what were they thinking, listening, talking about, singing about in 68, and then maybe fast forward a few albums and see where did they end up. You know, you get the whole trajectory of a body of musicians that way. Super cool to be able to do.
Yeah, but mostly of the people nowadays, they don't listen to music like you and
I don't think they care as much. No.
Yeah. It's a different way. So a lot of times the music is a soundtrack for something else they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it is for me too. Driving or like working. When I'm working, I'm always listening to music. But like I still sit down and like put my phones on and listen to that album and
That's
like
nice.
wow and travel into that universe.
I do occasionally
Yeah.
when I get some time to myself. I really enjoy that because I've got tapes, CDs, records, 8 tracks. I really like going to my record collection and picking out like a stack of 10 or so and pouring myself a drink and then going to the garage where my record player and all that crap is and then just checking it out. You get to read the liner notes and all that cool stuff. But like I'm an audiophile big time, you know.
Make them subscribe. They'll like you, but you gotta go.